All right, welcome back, everybody. Thanks for coming back for the final episode on the wiring diagram. So it's going to do a recap, and I'll show you a couple little things. I haven't got a lot of feedback on certain circuits you want to look at, so I think we must have covered everything, or you just don't care, one or the other. Anyways, so we already covered a lot of the numbers. We'll go over some of the numbers that they use for circuits. Real quick, and just go down the line, color codes, and certain inconsistencies with these diagrams compared to the later ones that we're going to show you next time. So let's take a look over here real quick now. We know that in the box we have a Roman numeral, a number, and then a letter. The letter, even though it doesn't show in our table of contents, or whatever you call it, it doesn't show that this is a small letter. Most of them, everything they show are the large letters. But when it's a small letter, we find that it's in the fuse relay panel. You're not going to find it outside. We covered all the letters here. Each letter indicates a connector on the back of the fuse relay panel, and the number corresponds to the pin inside that connector. And there's a whole bunch of them. The H's are the main power from the battery, things like that. 30 we know is battery voltage live all the time. 15 is only with the ignition in the on position and stays on while you crank the engine. X, load reduction, it's on until you crank the engine, and that shuts all these consumers off so the engine starter has more power. And then it returns to its on state, or 12 volts battery voltage, when the key is back to the on position. 31 is our ground. We have a whole ground bus at the bottom, but we also have a ground terminal inside the, I should say that's the ground bus inside to control certain relays that need a ground and whatnot. But our main grounds are all shown or depicted at the bottom. So if we see what's interesting here, see some do not have a number next to them. All of these, I know by experience that the generator regulator, all these are actually grounded. This is grounded to the case of the alternator. There might be a ground strap on some that go. Battery we know is grounded directly to the engine. The starter is grounded by bolting it to the engine or the bell housing, and that's why it's a thin line. That means it's kind of internally grounded and bolted to something. But the rest of these, we don't know where these go. But when we see here, number one, if we look on our paper we have that comes with the diagram, this one is near the fuse relay board. So everything with a 1, here, here, all these wires will end up in a bundle near our fuse relay board. And all the numbers are, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. They're only showing 5. Wait till you get to the next diagrams. There's so much more information. They actually really pinpoint where these grounds are, and a picture of the car pointing to where the grounds are. It's not like the Ferrari diagrams where there's actually a photograph of the part. These are just drawings and sketches, but they're really, really well done. This is a little bit more crude. Okay, let's go and now look at the terminals or the connectors. Here, not the connectors on the fuse panel, but there are connectors around the car. T1A, well, what does that mean? Well, that's in our paperwork that's with your diagram. T1 is a single pole connector, just a single terminal connected together, and it's A. So I don't know if you can see this or not, but if you look at the T1, it's a single pole A. This one's near the fuse relay board. So that's TA, but it's a single pole connector. We don't have a terminal designation here because it's only one pole. But let's go look at this one. This is T2. According to our paperwork, T2 is a 2-pole I. That's the letter I, not a 1. So that's T2I, which is near the additional turn signal right. Near additional turn signal right. Yeah, okay, we'll figure that out later. But this is terminal 1, now pin 1 in this 2 terminal. And here is T2I, and this is terminal 2. So these two would be in one connector. Terminal 1, terminal 2 in that connector. So that makes sense. And that's the same throughout the whole thing. And you'll see some inconsistencies as well, where you'll have a terminal number, like where did we find one earlier, that didn't have, it didn't have an E, A, B, and then there's no C, D, or E. Yet we see them on here, but it's not listed. So that's interesting. So let's see, we covered that. Let's find some other wiring here. Let's go over here. So here is, okay, here's our light switch. We're on part 2. This is telling me to find this wire. It's a brown wire. Brown is what? Ground. So we know this is going to be a ground, but where is it grounded? So let's find panel 4, current track 30, and we're coming from current track 3 on part 2. So 4, 30, and here it is here. The same letter E. This is from our panel 2, or part 2, current track 3. This is our ground, brown wire, and this ground goes over here to our speedometer cluster, our speedometer gauge, and over to this one here. This is our instrument cluster ground, and it's just grounded here at 1, which is our number 1 near the fuse relay board. Not real accurate, but at least we know that this ground throughout the harness all the way back to our second panel. We know that if we don't have a ground here, or this light doesn't light up, or there's something wrong in this circuit, we can go back and look at that ground by the fuse panel. Pretty neat stuff. A lot of information, but not nearly as much as on the next set of diagrams for the 85.5 and up. A lot of detail. Boy, that's gonna be a lot. So make sure you have a nice cold beer ready when you watch this video. What else do we have here? Radio diagram. Okay, here's one that's interesting. I think we went over this once before, but you notice the early 944 guys. This is the key in switch. If you shut the ignition off, you notice your radio will stay on, the antenna will stay up, and it goes off when you shut the when you pull the key out. It'll turn off. That's this connection right here. This is a little switch on the ignition lock assembly. When you pull the key out, the lock releases, it turns off this switch. And that's what turns on this relay, so to keep the radio alive, and that's probably to the antenna. I'm only going to guess that's to the antenna. We could track that, but not necessary at this point. This is all the information that we showed you in the past here. This is the wire size. That's 3/4 of a millimeter, relatively small wire. The 1/2 millimeter wires are probably the smallest you'll see in there. All the way up to a 4 millimeter, which is the battery terminals, and then the battery wiring to the fuse panel, and then the 16 millimeter, which is your actual battery cable. So what else do we have? Color codes. Pretty straightforward on this one. Black being a black wire is BK, white is WT, red RT, GN is green, YE yellow, makes sense, GR gray, BR brown, BL blue, and VI violet. I would use these color codes for just this diagram. You may see others with an L in front of it, meaning it's a lighter color wire. If it's an LBL, would be a light blue, things like that. So really got to sort of stick with the content page that goes with the diagram. I think we all know how relays work. Go over that real quick. We have a coil. When the coil is energized by a smaller current, it can switch something of a larger current. In this case, let's say the fog lights. We have power. We're switching a lot of current here for the fog lights. Those are halogen bulbs. They probably draw maybe 1.5 amps each. So a little tiny switch switching 3 amps with both lights, it can make quite an arc. So for a small switch, it could actually damage the switch. So we use a little relay. This relay coil draws maybe 0.5 amp, maybe not quite. which is enough to activate the switch, and that does all the heavy switching. So there's a lot of relays around that do different things. Some have an A terminal where this connection when the relay is at rest. I don't know if this uses any of those. Take a quick look. I don't see any right off, but they're out there with an A terminal. But the later cars, you see a lot more of them. So when the relay's in the off state, it's flowing current to a different path. I think that's about it. The windshield wiper circuit, pretty similar to the headlight motor circuit. We have the slip rings, and they do the exact same thing. If you understand how the headlight circuit works that we went over before, it's the same thing. Only this motor keeps moving. When you shut the wipers off, it keeps power activated until it gets to the opening, and then it shuts it off. If you have it set to the delay mode, then it will pick up the signal and reactivate the motor for that one pulse until it gets back to the open slot in the slip ring. But very similar to the headlights. All right, so I think you pretty much got everything that I can give you here. Just maybe a couple more notes. You see, like with the fog light switch, we have two positions of the fog light switch. One's an indicator light that they're on, and one of them comes on with the parking lights. You can actually follow this pretty simple now that I explain how. This is it's a green and blue wire, 0.5 millimeter. This goes to panel or part 5, current track 4, and is coming from 18 from part 2. And you can follow that along back and forth. It's really easy once you know how to do it. One note on relays again. You look this for the cooling fan relay. It's actually one coil that pulls both terminals. So these aren't connected internally, but they both move at the same time. So we have it's got the same two different power sources coming in. You see one power source here and one power source here from this fuse. And when this activates, we got this fuse runs this motor, and this fuse runs this motor, and it's grounded right here. And where is it grounded? Good question, because there's no number on this panel at all as to where it might go. Probably easy to find though. Ground wires are all brown, unless somebody's been in there before. Speaking of fuses, fuse colors. When you see something like fuse 10, 8 amp, well, to verify it's an 8 amp fuse, it would be white. The red fuses are 16 amp. The blue fuses, this says 24 amp, but I believe they're all 25. When you have a blue fuse, it's going to be 25 amp. Please don't interchange fuses. Keep the fuses where they belong. They're there for a reason, obviously. If you keep blowing fuses, there's a neat trick to help find out why the fuse is blowing. I can't get into that this time, but I'm eventually going to have a circuit set up and I can show you a couple things with that. Next week, we're going to be back on the 944 Turbo. Pretty much done with the diagrams here for now, these early diagrams. We're going to try to incorporate this on the later diagrams while we're working on the car, at least for a little bit. I want to show you the fuse relay panel, how it comes apart, how you can actually save one that's corroded or been in the rain and things are shorting out internally. It's really pretty cool. It comes apart and you can clean everything and tighten up connections. It's good. So we'll get to that in the future. We're going to get the 44 Turbo back in here because we have to get that apart, get ready for the body shop. In the meantime, go back and check out some of these other videos we did. Keep hitting that like button. Well, I think you can only do it once. How many times can you hit a like button? If you like it, hit it a lot. Subscribe. We need more subscribers. We're getting there. 463 so far as of today. So we want to keep that going. We want to build great things. We want to build a big shop. A lot of stuff going on. So keep liking, keep subscribing, and we'll see you next time. Thanks.